At 9:47 this morning, President Donald Trump posted on Truth Social a threat so bizarre, so contradictory, and so economically illiterate that it revealed something truly stunning about his entire trade strategy. He threatened to block the opening of the Gordie Howe International Bridge connecting Detroit, Michigan, and Windsor, Ontario, a bridge that Canada paid for entirely, a bridge that Trump himself had championed back in 2017, and a bridge that cost $5.7 billion with not a single American cent invested. And yet Trump is demanding that the United States own half of it before he allows it to open. This is not just about a bridge. Make no mistake. This is the moment Trump's entire trade leverage against Canada collapsed in a way that is almost cinematic. This is proof that Canada has been playing four-dimensional chess while Trump has been stuck playing checkers. And it signals the beginning of a fundamental realignment where America's closest trading partner is quietly building alternative routes that bypass the United States entirely. If you are watching this, turn on notifications because the next 6 months could determine whether the United States maintains its economic dominance in North America or whether Canada, Mexico, and China forge a new trading bloc that leaves the U.S. isolated. Let us start with Trump's own words. In his Truth Social post, he said, "I will not allow this bridge to open until the United States is fully compensated for everything we have given them. And also, importantly, Canada treats the U.S. with the fairness and respect that we deserve. With all that we have given them, we should own perhaps at least one half of this asset. Everything in that statement is wrong, factually wrong, legally wrong, and economically wrong. Every single claim is demonstrably false, and understanding why is crucial for anyone who wants to grasp how badly Trump miscalculated this situation. Canada has, in effect, destroyed Trump's negotiating position with a single infrastructure project. Let me explain exactly how. Canada spent $5.7 billion to build leverage against Trump's tariff threats. They built the bridge to ensure they could conduct trade efficiently without relying on the goodwill or whim of a single U.S. president. Trump, on the other hand, is so focused on short-term theatrics and scoring political points that he does not realize he has just lost the entire game. Now, a little context about the bridge itself, because context matters, and Trump either does not know it or is deliberately misrepresenting it. In 2012, Canada and the state of Michigan negotiated a deal to build a new bridge across the Detroit River. The existing Ambassador Bridge, privately owned by the billionaire Moroun family, was 95 years old, chronically congested, and a single point of failure for 25% of all U.S. Canada truck trade. This is not small potatoes. $1.5 billion worth of goods cross the Detroit-Windsor border every single day. The new bridge would provide a modern, publicly owned alternative with direct highway connections on both sides. The initial plan was for Michigan and the Obama administration to split the cost with Canada with an estimated price of $4.7 billion. But Michigan Republicans, led by then-Governor Rick Snyder, refused to fund it. The Michigan legislature voted no, while the Moroun family lobbied aggressively to kill the project, arguing that a competing bridge would hurt their monopoly. The Obama administration, facing Republican opposition in Congress, also declined to contribute federal funding. Canada stepped in. They made an offer. "We will pay for the entire bridge, all of it. In exchange, Canada and Michigan will own it 50-50, but Canada will collect tolls for 30 years to recover the construction costs. After 30 years, the toll revenue will be split." Michigan agreed. They got 50% ownership of a multi-billion-dollar bridge without paying a single dollar. It was, by any measure, the deal of the century. Construction began in 2018, and the bridge was scheduled to open in early 2026. Then came Trump, with his threat. And suddenly, a project designed for decades of trade stability became the centerpiece of political theatrics. Here is why Trump's threat is not only wrong, but catastrophically stupid for American interests. First, he claims the United States should own half the bridge. That is already true. Michigan owns 50%. Canada owns the other 50%. Even Trump's former Michigan Governor Rick Snyder published an op-ed this week explicitly stating, "We do already." Second, Trump claims the U.S. gave Canada something that entitles us to compensation. This is simply false. Canada paid the entire $5.7 billion construction cost. Zero American taxpayer dollars went into this bridge. Canada is recouping costs through tolls, and after 30 years, Michigan will receive 50% of the toll revenue indefinitely, all without having invested a single dollar. Third, Trump claims Canada built the bridge with virtually no U.S. content. Again, false. The 2012 agreement required that all steel and materials come from either the United States or Canada. Thousands of American workers have been employed on the bridge, and American steel has been incorporated into the structure. Trump is either lying or genuinely unaware of these facts. Fourth, Trump claims Canada needs his permission to open the bridge. Legally, this is murky at best. The bridge required a presidential permit, which was issued in 2012 by the Obama administration and reaffirmed in 2017 by Trump himself. It is unclear whether a sitting president has the unilateral authority to revoke such a permit without cause. The real reason Trump is threatening the bridge has nothing to do with fairness, respect, or ownership. It has everything to do with China. On January 16, 2026, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney traveled to Beijing and announced a landmark trade deal with China. Under the deal, Canada would reduce tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles from 100% to 6.1% on the first 49,000 vehicles per year, eventually increasing to 70,000 over 5 years. In exchange, China would reduce tariffs on Canadian canola oil from 84% to 15%, and also reduce tariffs on Canadian pork, seafood, peas, and lobster. This deal was designed carefully to comply with the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. It is not a free trade agreement. It is a sectoral tariff reduction targeting specific industries. But Trump's reaction was extreme. On January 24th, he posted on Truth Social, "If Governor Carney thinks he is going to make Canada a drop-off port for China to send goods and products into the United States, he is sorely mistaken. If Canada makes a deal with China, it will immediately be hit with a 100% tariff against all Canadian goods and products coming into the USA." Notice he called Carney a governor, not a prime minister. This is emblematic of Trump's mindset. He genuinely believes Canada should be the 51st state. Here is the problem with Trump's threat. Canada is the top export destination for 36 U.S. states. Approximately $3.6 billion Canadian dollars worth of goods cross the border every day. 60% of U.S. crude oil imports come from Canada, and 85% of U.S. electricity imports come from Canada. Canada is the largest foreign supplier of steel, aluminum, and uranium to the United States. If Trump imposes a 100% tariff on all Canadian goods, the U.S. economy would collapse. Gas prices would double, electricity grids would fail, and manufacturing would shut down. Trump cannot follow through, and Prime Minister Carney knows it. Trump pivoted to the bridge, thinking that if he cannot stop Canada from trading with China through tariffs, maybe he can stop Canada from trading at all by blocking the Gordie Howe Bridge. But that strategy does not work either because Canada has built alternatives. That is the entire point of the $5.7 billion bridge. Canada now has infrastructure that gives them leverage against U.S. threats. Here are the 5 ways Canada is systematically reducing dependence on the United States, with the Gordie Howe Bridge as the centerpiece. Strategy 1. Alternative trade routes with China. Canada's deal with China opens access to the world's second-largest economy. Canadian farmers get new markets. Canadian consumers access affordable Chinese electric vehicles, and Canada begins building supply chains that do not rely on the United States. Strategy 2. Infrastructure independence. The Gordie Howe Bridge is publicly owned by Canada and Michigan, not private American billionaires like the Moroun family. Canada controls the Canadian side completely. If Trump blocks the U.S. side, Canada can route trade through other crossings or build additional infrastructure. Strategy 3. Energy leverage. Canada supplies 60% of U.S. oil and 85% of U.S. electricity. If Trump escalates tariffs, Canada could reduce energy exports. U.S. gas prices would spike, electricity grids would face shortages, and Trump would have no counter. Strategy 4. Alliance building. At the World Economic Forum in Davos, Carney emphasized that middle powers must act together. He is building coalitions including Canada, Mexico, the European Union, Japan, South Korea, and others to counter potential U.S. trade aggression. Strategy 5. Domestic political strength. Carney's approval ratings in Canada are surging. Canadians are rallying around a prime minister who stands up to bullying, strengthening Carney domestically and internationally. Now, consider how Trump's threat actually accelerates Canada's pivot away from the U.S. On February 10th, Canadian officials held a press conference confirming that the bridge would open on schedule. They also confirmed Canada would not negotiate ownership. If Trump attempts to block the bridge, Canada will simply route trade through alternative crossings and accelerate investment in infrastructure bypassing U.S. bottlenecks. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer immediately criticized Trump, noting that blocking the bridge would harm American jobs and the U.S. economy. Even some Michigan Republicans broke ranks. Former Governor Rick Snyder published an op-ed warning that Trump's threat would primarily harm Americans, not Canadians. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, there was coordination with the Moroun family, the billionaire owners of the Ambassador Bridge, who have spent decades lobbying against the Gordie Howe Bridge. On February 10th, hours before Trump posted his threat, Matthew Moroun met with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, who then called Trump. Minutes later, Trump posted his threat. The timeline is clear. This is not a trade negotiation. This is a billionaire donor protecting a monopoly. Trump's threat is not about fairness. It is about self-interest for his allies. Let us consider the economic math. The Gordie Howe Bridge will handle 25% of all U.S. Canada truck trade, roughly $400 million per day, $146 billion per year. Over 30 years, that amounts to $4.4 trillion in trade. Canada invested $5.7 billion to secure that route. That is a return on investment of more than 77,000%. Compare that to Trump's position. He threatens $146 billion in annual trade. 25 million American jobs depend on U.S.-Canada trade. Michigan alone would lose $12 billion per year if trade were disrupted. Automotive supply chains would collapse. Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis production lines could shut down. This is not leverage. This is economic self-sabotage. Trump's trade representative Jamieson Greer admitted on Fox Business that he did not know the details of the bridge. When asked about ownership, he said, "The U.S. has a $29 trillion economy. Canada has $1 to $2 trillion. We should get our fair share." This is not trade policy. It is extortion, and it fails spectacularly when a smaller country has spent a decade building infrastructure specifically to bypass the larger country's leverage. Canada's strategy is clear. In 2012, they agreed to pay for the entire bridge. Between 2015 and 2018, they invested in Pacific trade infrastructure and began bridge construction. From 2020 to 2024, despite political delays, they continued building alternatives. By January 2026, Carney announced the China deal. By February 2026, Trump threatened the bridge. Too late. The infrastructure is built. Alternatives are in place. 5 key figures determine whether Trump's threat succeeds. Mark Carney, Canadian Prime Minister; Gretchen Whitmer, Michigan Governor; Matthew Moroun, billionaire bridge owner; Jamieson Greer, U.S. Trade Representative; and Howard Lutnick, U.S. Commerce Secretary. Their interactions show coordination between private monopoly interests and political threats. Here are 3 likely scenarios. Scenario 1. The bridge opens despite Trump's threat. Canada and Michigan ignore him. Trade flows increase. Michigan's economy benefits. Trump issues no formal order because he knows he has no authority. He looks weak. Carney looks strong. Scenario 2. Trump formally blocks the bridge. Canada and Michigan sue in federal court. Trump likely loses because the permit was issued in 2012. Trade is disrupted. Michigan loses billions. Trump blames Canada. Scenario 3. Trump and Carney negotiate. Canada agrees to stricter rules of origin for Chinese goods. Trump allows the bridge to open, and both leaders claim victory. But the underlying dynamic remains. Canada has built independence from the United States. The broader lesson for Americans is clear. If Trump succeeds, no country will build cross-border infrastructure with the U.S. again. Why invest billions if a future president can seize it? If Trump's actions are motivated by a billionaire donor monopoly, it proves that U.S. trade policy is for sale. If Canada pivots to China, the U.S. loses a primary trading partner. American jobs are lost, prices rise, and U.S. influence in North America diminishes. Canada spent $5.7 billion. Trump wants half without paying. Canada said no. Trump is learning the hard way. You cannot bully a country that has built infrastructure specifically to bypass your leverage.